Hi, I'm Ted Santos, and I am your host of Straight Talk. We are the talk show that is made for men, by men. Except ladies, you never want to miss our show. And we are the show that talks about love, life, relationships, social challenges, and sometimes even current events. We always do it from a man's perspective. And today, I want to take on a social issue that's a current event. And it involves relationships between men and women. And actually, I never thought I was going to touch this topic, at least not in this, at least on this platform. I had no plans to do that. I did a show that revolved around it, except it wasn't the focal point. So I want to ask a question. Do all women suffer from the Amy Cooper syndrome? Do all women suffer from the Amy Cooper syndrome? That's right, I use the word all. And I'm asking a question. And for all you guys who say, I ask stupid questions and why would you ask this? When I lay this out, you'll see you're actually contributing. You're actually helping to create, mold, and shape the Amy Coopers of the world. And the reason I'm having this is I did a show over the past few weeks in my Straight Talk, my talk show. I did a show asking, or I was suggesting that only married women should vote. And we had a very engaging and interactive conversation between men and women. And the next week, I asked, are women abusing their woman privileges? And I even used the term woman card. And a lot of women had a problem with that. They didn't think that it was fair and appropriate. You know what? Let's get that off the table. You know what? As soon as a woman expects a man to pay for a date, that's a woman card. It's a woman's job. We've spent decades listening to women say there are no roles, there's no such thing as a gender role, and women can do everything a man can do and they can do it better. But as soon as you start talking about certain things, oh, that's a man's job, all of a sudden her woman card. So what does this have to do with Amy Cooper? So let me say before I even dive into Amy Cooper was definitely... Who helped create Amy Cooper? First, it was feminists. And the feminists filled women's heads with this notion that all men want to do is dominate women. We are aggressive, we're dominators. We're gonna force you to get married, and the man is gonna force you to take his last name. He's gonna force you to be in the kitchen and be in a bedroom and get pregnant and barefoot and all this propaganda that was pushed hard in starting the 70s, maybe even the late 60s, actually. Women burned their bras. And then some of you fathers, you stood there like a deer in the headlight and didn't know what to say, knowing that you were not treating your women that way. Man and woman, they married, they raised a family together. It's what has been happening for millions of years. Women love this notion of a man being a hunter. So the man goes out and hunts. It may even be a group of men who go out on a hunting expedition for several days. They come back with food, and the whole tribe, the nation, eats. And the woman educated and took care of the children. And if you look at even nature, it happens in nature. Yet you women want to turn that paradigm upside down. You want to be the hunters, except you don't want the responsibility for being the hunter. So feminism has told women that all men want to do is dominate you. So as soon as a man makes a request or says to a woman, what you're doing is inappropriate, it's wrong, it's out of line, it's out of pocket, you're out of your lane, all of these things, what does the woman do? she pulls out her woman card. So who helped create this and allowed for this? Feminism. Because when she pulls out her woman card, when a man holds her accountable, feminism starts saying, well, you're just trying to control her. You're only doing that to her because she's a woman. You wouldn't do that to a man. And a lot of you guys fall for that. And you say, well, give her a pass. Right? That's exactly how the Amy Cooper. But before I even dive into that, even men in the workplace help create Amy Coopers of the world. Christian Cooper recorded Amy Cooper. If he had not recorded that, she would have played him like a fiddle and then denied it all and lied about it. And what would you guys have done? Oh man, you could have handled that better without being there. You know why? Because she played her woman card. Our legislators, our policymakers, what do? You're playing right into this. All a woman has to do is pretend to be a damsel in distress. And even the average guy on the street, they've done all kinds of social experiments where they have a woman hitting and verbally and physically abusing a guy on the street. And what do men, the average guy, do? What does he do? Does he stop the woman from hitting? No. He laughs. Maybe even says, oh, the guy probably cheated and deserved it. But if you flip that and the guy is hitting the woman, all of a sudden, equal rights, everything goes out the window and the man is wrong. So we allow women to get away with certain behavior. So when Amy Cooper is born into an environment with that kind of mindset, that women don't have to be held accountable, and when you do hold them accountable, what do? I'm going to call 911. I'm going to tell them you're a man. And what does she want to do? She's attempting to manipulate him. And she's telling him, I am going to do this, so back off. He didn't back off. He even pulls out his phone, and what does she do? Okay, you're a black man. I'm going to tell 911 you're a black man and I'm threatened. And she was hoping he would back off, because many of you men, you do that. That's the only reason she did that, is because it's worked in the past. You back off and you let her have her way and you just give her a pass. And Amy Coopers are born. They do it at work. They do it at home. They do it in their relationship. They do it with daddy. And daddy, you let it happen. So the Amy Coopers, she's not the only one. We saw it on tape. She lied. She pretended. She pulled out a woman card that she was the damsel in distress. And in Central Park, of all places where crazy things can happen to women, the police have to responsibly protect its citizens. So they rush someone over to save her. And what did she do? She falsely accused the guy. And someone actually may have died because she pulled a valuable resource of police, emergency units to come save her, because she was absolutely violating a policy in the park. She was breaking the law. And when a man called her on that, she has a problem with it. Someone may have died. We may never know that. But she pulled away a natural resource and there's no consequence for her. She even got in his face as though she was going to be really some tough chick who's going to fight the guy. She used everything to try and get him to back off from holding her accountable. Now, you know what would have been funny if he would have never recorded it? She would have claimed she ran circles around that guy and he was such an idiot and she was so tough and made him back off and blah, blah, blah. And that's exactly what happened in my Facebook group. I have this girl who went to high school with me who's claiming she's running circles around me and all of her friends can do the same. And when I address very specific issues, she avoids them and makes false accusations. When I address the false accusations, she starts using ad hominem attacks, which then become false accusations. And when I address that, she says, well, that's just convoluted, and she's running circles around me, except refuses to actually address anything, which is what Amy Cooper did. She did not address the fact she was breaking the law by having her dog off the leash. This woman, this girl from my high school, is doing the same. See, women are talking about how they intimidate men and run circles around them and actually never deal with what's happening. And a lot of you guys actually believe they're running circles around you when all they're doing is making false accusations. You bow down and back off. They make ad hominem attacks. Instead of dealing with the topic at hand, they start talking about you personally, calling you a pompous, which is what this girl is doing. I have an ego. I spend hours searching for words in a thesaurus to use them. None of these things are factual. It's just the way that women don't want to be responsible and deal with consequences, being accountable, and handling what is actually on the table. This is how we end up with so many divorces, fellas. I used to race on bicycles, and there's something called truing the rim. When your rim gets a little bit wobbly, slightly, that displaces energy. Instead of the tire going straight ahead, it's wobbling, so it's misdirecting energy. And there's something that you do to tighten the spokes so that you true the rim, so you don't waste energy. Women displace a lot of energy with false accusations, ad hominem attacks. And as men, your job is to true the rim and get it perfectly straight so that you can focus on exactly what needs to be handled. And one of the things that needs to be handled is women are screaming for equality. And when it's given, well, that's when the false accusations and ad hominem attacks come. So imagine Amy Cooper in the workplace, and you say, hey, this performance or what you did here wasn't well, or you didn't handle a responsibility well. Oh, you're just doing that because I'm a woman. That's discrimination. Now she doesn't have to deal with a poor performance. Imagine Amy Cooper at work. You see, the fact of life is we're one person. You're the same person at work as you are in your personal life. You're the same person when you're in Central Park. How you deal with conflict tells who you really are. And women claim to want equality. So imagine if we gave women actual equality. See, women want to invade and come into a man's world without actually understanding a man's world and wanting to deal with the consequences of a man's world. For example, Christian Cooper was the guy who filmed Amy Cooper. Now, if Amy was a guy, if it was Andy, and Christian said to Andy, hey man, your dog needs to be on the leash, what would Andy do? Hey man, sorry, put his dog on the leash and deal with it. Now, if Andy wanted to be a tough guy, he could have said, hey, I'm not putting my dog on the leash. He could have become exactly like Amy Cooper, become confrontational. Now, when men deal with conflict and confrontation between two men, the rules are different than when we deal with women. Men know that when words escalate and it gets beyond a certain point, like there are boundaries. And when a man crosses a certain boundary, we don't go to words, we slug it out. And if that same incident in Central Park would have been with a man and Christian would have said, put your dog on a leash, the man, he becomes confrontational, they would have slugged it out. But it's a good chance they wouldn't have, because they would have understood that there were boundaries and you just don't cross them. This is a problem. When men invite women into a man's world, workplace, a gym, sports, men have an established way of handling things. And it's part of our biology. And it's not just testosterone. There are other biochemicals that make us aggressive, competitive. It has 10-year-old boys fight or be 20 times more likely to fight. That's right. 10-year-old boys are 20 times more likely to fight than 10-year-old girls. Girls will argue and calling each other names. It's our biochemistry. When we invite women into that world who want to be equal, we haven't figured out a way to deal with women, because women don't understand those boundaries. They will cross boundaries, and our social constructs doesn't allow a man to treat a woman the same way he would treat a man. So Christian Cooper had to record it. Her inappropriate, her kind of screwed up behavior that we as a society has found acceptable. Like there's nothing we can do about it. You see, that behavior needs to be addressed the same way it would have been addressed if two men would have slugged it out and fought and there were abuse charges. Because what Amy Cooper did was abusive. Now imagine her in a workplace and someone says, your annual review is not good. How you handle diversity, maybe the way you're managing men is not good. She would say, well, you're just doing this because I'm a woman. Unacceptable. You want to play in a man's world and now come in and change the rules. You want time off for maternity leave. In a hunter-gatherer society, there's no maternity leave. And a lot of women are saying, well, men get maternity leave too. In a hunter-gatherer society, it doesn't work. You know why? Because I lived in Belize with Mayan Indians in the jungle, no electricity, no running water, and there was no such thing as a man taking off from hunting or planting food because his wife just gave birth. You feed your family. Women want to come in and change the rules. They fight to get into a man's space and then demand to have laws that allow them an out, an easy out. How does that work? So, are there solutions? Yes, there are. Have absolute equality across the board. And that means all you fathers who are training your daughters to have multiple personality disorders, like we saw with Amy Cooper. At one point, she was tough, and I'm going to kick your ass. And then, oh, help me, a black man. How many personalities? That's the princess, the damsel in distress who's terrified, or she's going to be a tough man. Which one is it? When one works, you just do another. You tell your little girls that they should be equal to men. Fathers, why aren't you teaching your girls that it's their job and responsibility to pay for first dates, every date? Why aren't you teaching your little girls it's their job to drop to one knee and put a ring on a man's finger? Why aren't you teaching them that when there's danger, there's no such thing as the women and children go first. You let the children go and you leave the women next side by side with the man to deal with the danger. Because otherwise we're treating women like a weaker sex, and that's sexism. There's no protection. When you see a woman beating on a man on the street and you're laughing, well, when it's flipped, treat it the same way. Say, well, she probably deserved it. Give absolute equal. And the other thing that we do is, in total equality, all you fathers and mothers with daughters, you fight to have all the schools get rid of girl sports. You only have sports. There's a baseball team, football team, soccer, tennis, volleyball, basketball. Everything is just one. Everyone plays for one team. The best person wins. If your daughter is not good enough to play against boys, then she doesn't make the team. There's no college, there's no Olympics for girls, nothing. No professional sports. When you get to the workplace, if you can't do everything that's required, if you can't put in all the hours, if men are gynecologists and they're working outrageous hours, and when you hire women and they refuse to put those hours, then you fire them because they cannot meet the demands of the job. If the job requires travel, if a woman says, well, my child is sick and I have to go to school, or there's a problem, she cannot do the job. Her menstrual cycle, she has cramps. Make it equal. If we're going to kill the Amy Cooper syndrome, one solution is make it absolute equality. That means you teach your daughters to be equal, not convenient, where they get what they want in one circumstance and then not have to contribute at all and have no responsibility. They only know a man's responsibility, except know nothing about a woman's role in a relationship. How does that work? Do people see that eventually this is going to create a problem? And you're wondering why so many men have elected to just walk away, or they're just going abroad. I mean, these are men who really do love and appreciate women. Except, do women really love and appreciate men? And men are starting to question that. They're questioning if any woman around the world has any appreciation for men. And some of them are finding that women in other countries do. You may be less likely to find Amy Cooper. And then there are some universal things that we find all over the world. So all you ladies with the Amy Cooper syndrome, when someone says, hey, what you're doing is out of line, and you start playing like they said something wrong, like they took something from you, and you have to lie, and then you turn around and say, well, you ran circles around the guy. That's irresponsible. And it's really helping to erode the very fabric of this nation's culture. It's eroding performance in a workplace because we allow for lower performance from women. And you think I'm lying? No. There are tons of salesmen who work in Fortune 500 companies, and when there's a female manager, sales manager, the female sales manager will fire a man who underperforms. When it comes to a woman who underperforms, well, she's a single mother, we can't fire her, it's unfair, she needs the job. That doesn't work. That creates an unspoken policy, which means if you underperform here, there's a reward. You keep your job, especially for women. Is that the message we want to send women? So equality is what I'm calling for, right? The same in high schools where it costs $5 to encourage a girl to major in math and science, and it only costs $1 to get the same for a boy. Make it 1-for-1 for everything. I don't think you women want that. The other solution, ladies, especially for you ladies who don't need us, go build your own city. Just go. Your own roads, bridges, skyscrapers, your automobiles, manufacturing facilities. And that way you don't have to worry about men dominating you and trying to tell you to put your dog on the leash. You don't have to worry about men outperforming girls, and you have to create a disadvantage for boys. And by disadvantage, in schools, they cover the names of students in elementary school, and the teachers graded the papers. And when a teacher didn't know the name of the student, boys scored 30% higher. That means teachers, especially you ladies, you are purposely suppressing boys and giving them lower scores because you want to give girls a better advantage. How does that benefit our society? So all of you Amy Coopers of the world, what are you doing for our society? And for you Amy Coopers who are watching this video, you know who you are. I want to hear your comments. If you don't like what I said, tell me why. Subscribe to my channel, Amy Cooper. Fellas, subscribe to my channel. Like it, share it, get this message out in the world. Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts on this. And for a conversation I never planned to have, this went much longer than I anticipated. So join me on Sundays with Straight Talk, become part of the conversation so that we can help correct things in our society. Let's keep the conversation going, fellas, and I'll see you next time. Bye.